So something we hear daily from installers is that we've tried Facebook ads before and they didn't work. So whether it's something that they've run in-house or worked with an agency on, a lot of installers out there have tried with online advertising and ultimately failed with it in some capacity. In a lot of cases for the installers that we speak to, it leads them to completely write off trying again in the future. They think that the problem was with the platform, so i.e. Facebook or Instagram, rather than how their campaign was set up. So in this video, we'll jump into 4 of the most common reasons that your last advertising campaign may have failed and how you can solve that for future campaigns that you run. So reason number 1, and in my opinion the most common, is that you have a weak offer. So selling points like bespoke design or free quote just won't cut it in what is quite a competitive market now. These are much more of an expectation than they are an offer or a selling point. And if that is the main angle that you're going to advertise with, you're really going to struggle to generate any sort of volume. And the likelihood is there are your competitors out there that provide a better service, a faster service, they've got more reviews and testimonials, they've probably got a cheaper price, whatever it might be, they've got a more compelling offer than you do. So if you are going to advertise on social media and you're going to lead with bespoke design or free quote or anything like that, then it is a very quick way to throw a lot of money down the drain. So this doesn't mean that you have to be the cheapest company or start doing price packages, but you do need to be very creative and very clear about why people should pick you over your competitors. And when you do start thinking about your offer, the truth is not a lot of customers really care that you're family run or where your equipment comes from. They care what can you do for them and what is it going to cost. So you really need to start focus on selling the outcome. To do that, a really good diagram which comes from a book called $100 Million Offers is this one here. So it's got 4 sort of main elements that you should really think about and really sort of plan before you get into actually launching your advertising campaign. So first one is listing out all of the dream outcomes of your potential customers. So in our industry, that's going to be things like a warmer home, reduced energy bills, affordable upfront costs, stuff like that. Secondly is the likelihood of achievement. So that basically means how likely are you to be able to help them do that. So you can think about social proof, reviews, accreditations, things that are going to make the customer trust you to reduce their bills or make their home warmer. Thirdly is time delay. So essentially, how quickly can you solve their problems? How quickly can they see results? How quickly can they see savings? So you really need to start thinking about speeding up the tangible results that you get for customers. And then the 4th is the effort and sacrifice from the customer. So in short, that is how easy can you make the process for the customer. To help you start putting this together, we've got a offer creation resource. So this is something that we give to everyone who joins our program, but essentially it breaks down how to create a really solid offer before you get into advertising. So you go through basically how to craft a no-brainer offer, referring back to the elements I just ran through previously, as well as adding things like guarantees, bonuses as well, just to make sure that when you do start advertising, you're going to be very competitive, whether that's on price, on your reputation in the industry, whatever it might be, but you need to have some sort of clear offer that distinguishes you from your competition. So the second reason that your last campaign might have failed is that you were too complacent. And by that I mean that just because someone has inquired through your advert, it doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to buy from your company. You still need to call them quickly, follow up on them as often as you can, instill conviction and trust that you are the correct company for them to go with, and you really need to nurture the lead rather than just assume that they're ready to buy. A lot of the time these leads have clicked on 3 or 4 other adverts, or it might even be the first inquiry they've made or the first time they've even heard of something like heat pump or solar panels. So for them it's a decision worth thousands of pounds, and even if they have already decided they want to go solar or get a heat pump installed, they still need to be convinced that you are the company to do it. And from our experience working with all the clients we have done, the ability to handle and actually deal with leads effectively is a really underappreciated part of the sales process. So a lot of companies put a lot of effort into where the leads come from and a lot of effort into their sales process, but that gap in between of getting a lead through to a sales appointment or a quote or a survey, whatever you want to call it, a lot of installers seem to ignore. They just, if it's not working, say the leads are poor quality, rather than looking inwards at what they can actually improve on. So they'll say things like, this lead's not interested, it's poor quality, I've called them a few times, they won't pick up. All of this is completely wrong, and if you have the mentality that leads don't convert because they are poor quality, then it's one you need to get rid of, particularly if you are going to advertise to a cold audience online. So to do that, you need to basically have kind of two main factors in mind when dealing with leads. So the first and most important one is speed, and then secondly is persistence. So speed is essentially how quickly can you get to that lead, get them on the phone and get them booked in for a survey. And then the second one, persistence, is if you don't reach that lead straight away, how many times can you make contact with them, whether that's WhatsApp, phone call, email. You really need to make sure you do everything you can to get hold of that customer and get the opportunity to give them a quote. And if you do get into the mentality of how can I maximise every opportunity that comes my way, you'll start to see a lot more deals come through the door and you'll start to see much better results in your advertising campaign. And a little fun fact is that all of our highest converting clients, so the clients that we have that have the highest sales conversion rates, barely, if ever, mention lead quality. They're always just completely focused on what they can do to maximise what's coming towards them. So reason number 3 why your last campaign might have failed is by not using data. So you could have had a rough idea of what your cost per lead is or what percentage converted into jobs, but if you're not tracking all of your data meticulously and basing decisions on that, then you're likely going to struggle. So some questions to ask last time is, were you basing your decisions off the data? Did you have key performance indicators that you're kind of aiming for during your campaign? Do you know the actual reason your campaign failed was? A lot of the time, you probably don't know that. You probably chucked money at adverts with no clear plan, no goal, which can work on a small scale. You might get a few jobs out of it, but eventually over the long term, or as you start to increase your budget, you can very quickly start burning cash if you don't really understand the numbers. So obviously tracking your cost per lead is a start, but you need to understand things like calling stats. So what is your speed to lead? What is your contacts rate? How many dials are you making per lead? All the way through to why was this lead not a good fit? How can we improve lead quality and much more? So this is a really crucial part of our program where essentially we dive into data tracking and troubleshooting. So this goes into all the KPIs you should aim for, as well as if you're out of KPI, what can you do to improve that? So you should really have sort of key numbers that you want to hit of your campaign, and if you aren't hitting them, you need to analyse why not and actually make decisions from that, rather than just saying this isn't working, I'm going to turn it off. And it's only really with this information, so with the numbers and the data, that you can actually identify bottlenecks in the system, because a lot of the time when a campaign fails, it's just really one thing that's not working out that you can more often than not fix quite easily. So for example, the most common one, these leads are poor quality. You need to understand what is your lead to appointment ratio, why are leads dropping off from lead to appointment, what is your speed to lead, how many times you're actually following up on these leads. All of these kind of questions and data points you need to understand. So one actual real life example that I'm sure a lot of agencies have experienced is where you send a bunch of leads to a client, they end up not converting for whatever reason, and no one really seems to understand what's going on. Luckily for us, we track all the data. So a real life example we had an Eco4 client. They complained that the campaign wasn't working and they were going to try a different agency. From our end, everything looked really good, the volume of leads, the cost per lead, and we were actually calling and qualifying leads on their behalf, so we knew that these leads were completely fine. So when we looked at the numbers, we'd had 120 inquiries come through. 95 of those we managed to get on the phone and contact. We managed to pass across 30 of those to the client. 20 of those 30, the client said, yeah, these look good, we'll take them on. And then they only managed to get one of those leads to actually send over the relevant documentation before they were surveyed. So you can really see that here the bottleneck is them actually getting the leads to send across the relevant documentation and evidence they needed. So when we spoke to them in a bit more detail, it finally came out that kind of their submission to lead department was overworked and they weren't actually chasing up the leads as well as they should have been. And we can only kind of see this issue and then work with them to solve it because we actually tracked all the data. Another mistake that a lot of installers make is not focusing on the bigger picture. So a lot of people kind of really focus on cost per lead or how many leads they can get, but the only piece of data that truly matters is your cost per acquisition. So what are you paying to acquire a new customer? All the other data in advertising like cost per click, cost per lead is helpful, but what really matters at the end of the day is what you're paying for your end goal, which is a new customer. So an example of this is you might have a cost per lead of £75 on your Tesla Powerwall ads, which is quite a high cost per lead on the face of it, but 1 out of 3 of those leads convert, leaving you a cost per sale of £225, which is, for a lot of installers, not bad at all. but your mate down the road tells you that his ads for the same product get a cost per lead of £30. You start looking at his adverts, changing what you're doing to try and copy him, but you don't actually know only 1 out of 15 of his leads convert, leaving his cost per sale at £450. Now, there could be many reasons for this. It could be that your ad produces better leads, you have a better sales process, your company has a better online presence. Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. If you're happy with what your cost per sale is, and you're profitable with your ad campaign, you don't really want to make major changes. It doesn't mean that you can't make iterations and test new ideas, but you need to do it whilst analysing the data and using the numbers to actually make those decisions and make those iterations. And really, at the end of the day, if your cost per sale is at a level you're happy with, there is no reason for you to make massive changes to your campaign or start turning things on and off. So, reason number 4 why a lot of companies fail with their advertising campaigns is because they aren't patient enough. So that means patient as in they don't give it enough time to actually start seeing the results, or in another sense it can also mean that they don't give it enough of a budget to actually properly test it. So on the time idea first, Meta is incredibly smart, and if you keep fiddling with your campaign or if you keep turning it on and off after a week, it will affect your results. So it might be painful to watch that initial sort of week or two of your campaign where the cost per lead is quite high. You might have spent a few £100s without actually seeing a survey or an install out of it. But you really need to start kind of zooming out. So as an example, your campaign might have 0 conversions in the first 3 days. So you might have spent £200 and got absolutely nothing back from it. But then on day 4, you get 5 leads come through and suddenly everything looks okay. So really with all of your advertising efforts, you need to zoom out, give it at least a few weeks before you start saying this isn't working, and really just try and detach the emotion from those first couple of weeks of your campaign. And this doesn't just apply to that first couple of weeks, so whether it's a new campaign or new ad account, it applies to any change you're making. So if you go launch a new offer or start advertising a new service, it does genuinely take at least a few days for Meta to learn how to deliver your ads, and also for you to gather the data that you need to decide whether it's being efficient or not. And any big changes to that too soon just resets the learning, so it'll give Meta little insight, and it also gives you little insight into what's working as well. So when you do go live with a advertising campaign, whether that's with an agency or with yourself, we would advise don't even worry about the results for their first week or two. Just let the campaign run with what you've launched, and then after that first week, you can sit down and really start digging into the numbers. And the great thing about this is if you do let things run for a week without touching anything, there are likely a handful of really easy changes that you or your agency can make to start improving results. So you can start removing underperforming creatives, pushing your budget towards the better performing ones, turn off a interest targeting option that didn't work. All of these are just a few clicks of the button and will, in a lot of cases, half your cost per lead, double leads coming through, whatever it might be. So as we sort of touched upon on the data side of things, only switch off a campaign if your cost per install is no longer profitable. Other than that, you should keep tweaking things, seeing what's working, and kind of working on your campaign. So to summarise, these are just 4 of the most common reasons that a paid ads campaign can fail. There are an endless list really of why. So to summarise, these are just 4 of the most common reasons why your ads campaign might have failed. So firstly, you don't have a compelling offer. Secondly, you're too complacent with your leads and didn't work them enough. Thirdly, is that you didn't track your data and actually use that to make decisions. And then 4th is that you weren't patient enough with your campaign. But these are only 4. Obviously, there are an endless list of reasons that your campaign might not have been profitable. And you can check out more videos on our channel to help you run a profitable campaign in the future. Any resources that I refer to, such as the offer creation resource in our program, they'll be linked in the description below for you as well.